Welcome, everyone. I'm Alice Meadows. I'm the convener for C4DISC for our 2023 to 24 fiscal year. My day job is a co-founder of the MoreBrains Cooperative, which is a consulting organisation for scholarly communications. I'm joined here by 3 of the 4 other people who are sort of, I guess, leading the organisation, working for the organisation as part of the steering group. Bernie Folan, who's our communications expert, Vanesa Evers, who is the community administrator, Gillian Cain, who's the treasurer for this year. Unfortunately, Charlotte Rowe, who's the convener-elect, is not able to join us today, but she was very much involved in developing these slides and is a very integral part of the team. And you'll also meet the other members of the steering group shortly. So welcome. Next slide, please. So just before we start, we wanted to share some guidelines and sort of etiquette for this meeting. We do have a code of conduct and I encourage you to take a look at it, but in brief, please be respectful of other people, of other people's opinions. You know, if anybody, I'm sure this won't be the case, but we do reserve the right to sort of eject anybody who misbehaves from this meeting. It is a meeting, not a webinar, so please do keep your microphone muted and please use the chat at any time to submit your questions, your suggestions, to introduce yourselves. We have a couple of great volunteers from our steering committee who you'll meet later who are going to be assembling all the questions, and we'll respond to as many as we can during the discussion. If we don't get to everything, we will answer them afterwards for you. We are recording the session, as you can tell. The chat log is public and it'll be saved, and we'll be sending a link of the session recording to all registrants, so not just the people who attended, but everybody who registered for the meeting. Next slide, please. So just a little about what you can expect. This is the sort of the welcome and introduction part. We're going to talk a little bit about C4DISC. Some of you I know are very familiar with the coalition, but we think probably some of you are not so much. So we want to tell you a little bit about us and how we operate, our history, our governance. We're going to take a look at our financials for the year 2022 to 23. We're going to look back at what we did last year and forward a little bit to what our plans are for this year, and then we're going to tell you how you can get involved if you're not already, or if you want to be more involved. So looking forward to talking to you. As I say, please do, we're hoping to leave quite a lot of time for questions and discussions, so please don't hold back and do ask. And I will also say that there are many of the steering committee on the call with me, and I'm sure they will, and I absolutely want them to jump in with answers, or to correct me if I say anything wrong. So you hopefully will hear from more than just us. Okay, next slide, please. So a little bit about C4DISC, the Coalition for Diversity and Inclusion in Scholarly Communications. So our mission is to work with organisations and individuals to build equity, inclusion, diversity and accessibility in scholarly communications. And our vision is a socially just community that welcomes, values and celebrates all who seek to contribute to scholarly communications. We also, unsurprisingly and rightly, have some values that we aspire to and try to live. First are all around being respectful, so valuing differences and welcoming diverse perspectives. We also seek to listen, so to learn from different communities and make space for marginalised voices. And really importantly, we want this to be a coalition that acts to really help eliminate barriers and to be an ally of those people in marginalised communities. Next slide, please. So this is just a really brief and somewhat selective history of C4DISC, because again, some of you on the call may not know about how the coalition was founded. So it started actually quite a long time ago at the SSP meeting in 2017, where we convened a meeting between about 10 organisations, including SSP. It was actually very much driven by SSP, and I don't know whether Melanie Dolacek, who's SSP's executive director, is on the call, but I do want to give her a special shout out because she really drove a lot of the early years and was the convener for the first several years of the organisation's existence. So we had some initial discussions first at the SSP annual meeting and then continuing on through 2018 when we developed our joint statement of principles, which has over 150 signatories now. During 2019 and 2020, with very, very helpful pro bono support from Educopia, we formalised ourselves. So that's when we thought about our mission and our vision and our values, and we revisited the statement of principles, things like that. So that was very helpful and got us to a point where we could kind of officially launch. We're not a legal entity, but we did launch and open ourselves up to new members and partners, in addition to the founding members. And we'll talk a bit about that in a minute. And we also in 2020 took on, as sort of part of this, really agreed and delighted to start hosting the toolkits for equity, which you'll be hearing quite a bit about. And indeed, in 2021, we published the first of the toolkits that was published under the auspices of C4DISC, the Anti-Racism Toolkit for Organisations, and we also updated our statement of principles. In 2022, we published 2 more toolkits, one for Black, Indigenous and People of Colour in Scholarly Publishing, and also the Guidelines on Inclusive Language and Images. Last year, and you will be hearing quite a lot more about last year, as I said, so I won't go into too much detail, but some of the highlights were the launch of our honorarium pilot and the launch of the Community of Practice and the Workplace Equity Project Survey. And this year, again, you'll hear a lot more, but very excitingly, this is our first ever community meeting, and we decided we were at a point where we really wanted to share with our growing community what we're doing, how you can get involved. And so we're really delighted that there's such a lot of interest among you all. Next slide, please. Thank you. So these are our members and partners. We have 14 members now. There were 10 originally, so we've grown a bit there, and we have 25 partners, including one honorary partner, PubPub, who host all the toolkits content for us and set that up, which is fantastic. So next slide, please. So actually, I probably should have said on the last slide, the members, the distinction between members and partners is that membership is restricted to organisations of organisations, if you like. So organisations whose members are mostly or entirely other organisations. Partnerships are open to everyone, and so it's a slightly different kind of thing. So partnerships are any organisation. So typically there are organisations like publishers and things like that. Societies are our partners. The steering committee is comprised of representatives from member organisations for the most part, and each member organisation has 1 seat on the steering committee. We meet, as you can see, virtually. This was our meeting this week. Some of us look better than others in this, each, as I say, each member organisation has 1 voting seat on the steering committee. There are a couple of organisations that have alternate representatives, and there's a handful of us, including myself, Melanie Dolchek now, and Melanie Schlosser, who was last year's convener, who aren't officially voting members, but we have been involved since the beginning, and we continue to be involved and are very happy to be. So that's sort of roughly how we run. Very happy to answer any questions you might have about governance, and there's also a link on this slide to more information on our website about how we run. Next slide, thank you. Okay, I am now going to hand over to Gillian, who's our treasurer for this year, and she's going to talk you through a little bit about our finances.
Thank you, Alice. So here you're looking at the income statement for the organization for our fiscal year, which runs July to June. So this is for the July 2022 to June 2023 period. So we're about halfway through our current fiscal year at this time. So as you can see in the income section, funds received from members, partners, and any donors are the main source of income for the organization. In the expenses section, I wanted to give a little more context and detail to the kinds of things you see listed there. Accounting and administrative support, we want to say thank you to AU Presses, who are the fiscal sponsor for C4DISC, and the support they provide, including preparing financial statements such as these. Program support encompasses a number of things. Some specific examples include support for toolkit development and publishing. There might be specific needs when a toolkit is being worked on, such as graphic design or specific software. And so those are some of the dollars that are seen there. Professional services includes a number of things, including the honorarium pilot program for volunteers, which we'll be covering in our 2023 highlights, and as well as staffing. So the community administrator role and the newly created communications and engagement coordinator role. And we'll be talking in more detail about both of those roles in a second. So now let's change the slide and look at the balance sheet as of June 2023. The priority for the first several years of the organization was to secure financial footing, which, as you can see reflected in the balance sheet, has been accomplished. We've been really frugal and relied heavily on volunteers and donated services to create many of the resources that have been produced so far. Our attention is now turning to investing funds and activities that support the strategic priorities that the steering committee defined during 2023 and will be shared in a moment. As mentioned when looking at the income statement, some of those investments include the pilot honorarium program and additional staff supporting marketing and communication. Other initiatives and efforts we're considering investing in are reformatting and repackaging resources that have already been developed into different formats, refreshing the website design, and supporting future survey work, like the workplace equity survey that will be talked about in a moment, as well as others that have been in discussion and others that will emerge over time. We really want to invite you to share your thoughts and suggestions on initiatives in which we can invest. So please feel free to enter those in the chat at any time during the call or share them during the time for discussion after the presentation. And now I'd like to hand it back to Alice to talk about the work we did in 2023.
Thanks, Gillian. And my thanks again to you for being our treasurer this year. And I also want to acknowledge Britt Stamey, who was the treasurer actually for the year of the results that we just reported. So thank you to you both. So what we did in 2023, we divided this into three general areas. So we set ourselves some strategic priorities, which were around communications and outreach, setting up a community of practice, and looking at our content strategy. In terms of volunteer work, and as Gillian says, we are hugely both reliant on and grateful for our community of volunteers who we really could not function without. And some of the key things that they helped us with last year were Toolkits for Equity, the Workplace Equity Survey, 2023 version, and one way that we have tried to acknowledge, particularly for those who are themselves from sort of marginalized or historically underrepresented communities, by launching an honorarium pilot where people who are, I guess, burdened by the diversity tax of bringing their own experiences to bear to help us address some of those experiences and hopefully make things better. We wanted to be able to give them some sort of financial acknowledgement of the work that they've done. So we started this pilot last year. We just agreed to continue it for another year. We recognise that it's $300 is what we have been giving people. We recognise that that doesn't by any means cover the amount of work that they're doing, but we hope that it is an acknowledgement of that. And certainly the feedback we've had from people has been positive, which is why we're extending it for another year. We're also hoping that this is something that perhaps at the end of the pilot period, we'd like to write and talk a bit about, and maybe it's something that other organisations can learn from. In terms of hires and governance, again, Gillian referred to this. We're delighted last year to welcome Bernie and Vanesa as a communications role, which is a new one, as Gillian said. And then Vanesa was a replacement for our first community administrator, Anna. They're both fantastic additions. They are part-time, and but really the amount of work they get through in the number of hours that they're meant to be doing, I think they're probably going above and beyond, and they're making a huge difference to the work that we're able to do. So many thanks to them, and you'll be hearing more particularly from Bernie in a minute about all the work that she's been doing on the communications side. We also had a changeover of convener and treasurer. So as mentioned, Melanie Schlosser was the convener before me. She did a fabulous job. The strategic priorities for 2023 were very much driven by her. So many thanks, Melanie, to you. I think you're on the call somewhere. And as I mentioned, the previous treasurer was Britt Stamey. And again, many thanks to her. So I think that's it on this slide. So I'm going to talk briefly about content strategy, which was more of a sort of internal focus strategic priority, and then hand over to Bernie to talk about the communications and outreach and community of practice work that we did as part of our strategic priorities. So the content strategy was really thinking about things like our process for publishing content. So the toolkits are the biggest example, obviously, of the publications that we host and help shepherd through. So we wanted to tighten up the process for that to make sure that, you know, we all knew what was meant to happen when and who was responsible for what in terms of reviewing and shepherding. Also in terms of format, we've been doing some thinking about, you know, can we make more content available in different types of format like video? And that ties back in with what Gillian said about our finances and where we might want to spend those, translations, licensing, that kind of thing. So the content strategy was really mostly us thinking through sort of how to have better processes for all of that. The communications and outreach and community of practice were really our sort of outward focusing efforts, and Bernie has really been instrumental in driving those forward. So I'm going to hand over to her now.
Hi, hello. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm sure someone will say if they can't. I'm going to start by saying this is a bit of a strange thing to say, but I'm currently in the west of Ireland and there are 3 donkeys outside my window. So if you hear a strange sound, it's the donkeys. And I just thought I'd say that because I keep hearing them and it's a little bit off-putting. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about communications and outreach. So as has been alluded to earlier, this year we hired, it's kind of weird me saying we because I am the person, but C4DISC decided to add a staff member part-time to help with communications and engagement and outreach stuff. And that's me. So it's a kind of equivalent to a quarter full-time equivalent role, so a few hours a week. And the purpose of the role is to help amplify what we're doing, but really the intent by doing that is so that we can coordinate effort across organizations that are our members, our partners, our adopters, and wider in the community of scholarly communications. We want to make sure that we can include everybody who wants to be included in the work we're doing or hear about the work we're doing, streamline our processes, make our resources and our information more accessible, and yeah, generally strengthen the efforts that are going on across the community by helping to communicate out and yeah, involve more people. So I think that's all I need to say on that, really. So yeah, bear with us while we kind of streamline and get up to speed. And as has been said already, really welcome your ideas and suggestions. And we'll talk a bit more about communications in our forthcoming plans for 2024, because we're hoping to get a little bit more help from some volunteers. So I'll just leave that there and move on to the next slide and talk about the newly formed community of practice. So this was something that we decided to launch in response to feedback from a survey that we put out in I think it was 2022 maybe, but in 2023 we launched this community of practice because we heard that people wanted to hear about what others are doing, to share knowledge, to share practical resources, to ensure that, you know, people weren't reinventing wheels in different organizations or communities, and also to have a kind of safe space where people could talk not just about their successes, but about also things that hadn't gone so well, lessons that had been learned within their organizations or in other groups that they're part of. the calls are not recorded, they're not minuted. We do share summaries after the calls, but they're anonymized, and that's, you know, to help those who can't make it to the calls. So this slide outlines how the community of practice runs. So it's a peer-to-peer community of interest. As I said, we hope it's going to enable participants and to build trusted connections and knowledge sharing opportunities. So after calls, we hope, you know, that if individuals connect with somebody or see somebody on a call that they think may be useful to them in some way, that they'll reach out and make that connection, or use us to do that invitation. It's open to everybody working in a DEIA capacity, whether that's a dedicated role or not, in all sizes of scholarly communications organizations. And we hope that, as I've already said, that people will share, explore opportunities for participating cross-industry. And this is actually a direct quote, I think, from one of our survey respondents: to speak with one voice to increase effectiveness, because we're all aware that there is so much going on, but it might not be joined up in every case. So the calls are held, there are hour-long calls held on the second Thursday of every month via Zoom. We currently have 218 members of the community. We've seen a kind of average of 20 to 40 attendees on calls, and we choose topics drawn from the suggestions made by members when they join. You can optionally suggest topics you'd like to explore. And we've had, the first call didn't have a topic, the two most recent had the topics of psychological safety and inclusive language. And the next call is on February the 8th. So you're very welcome to join the community and join in if you can make it, or read the summary following the call if you can't. And you'll find the link. I've created a link, a bit.ly link that you just saw there, but I think somebody's put the link in Vanessa might have put the link in the chat, so you can find out more and join. And this is the current working group who are managing the community of practice. So this is a group of volunteers. They manage the community with help from me. And I think we have one other community working group member that's joined recently that's missing from this slide. But we welcome, if you're interested, we welcome you to get involved and take part in running the calls and generally making sure the community thrives. So if we can move on to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about our toolkits for equity. So this is more of what we did in 2023. So there have been 2 new toolkits being worked on in the background during the year. We're going to come on in a moment to look at the existing toolkits, but the 2 that are in progress at the moment, again, run by working groups of volunteers, are the Toolkit for Disability Equity, which is, I think, probably going to launch in Q1 this year, but they're currently kind of just finishing off and getting stuff together. And the other is the Building Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Accessibility in Peer Review, which is very, very close to launch. That's just currently undergoing some final review, I think. And over on the right here, you'll see an award that was won last year for one of our toolkits, the C4DISC Anti-Racism Toolkit for Black, Indigenous and People of Colour. And that was won by Graphic, who helped develop the look and feel of the toolkit. That was the AM&P Excel Awards. They were the providers of that award. And then if we move on to the next slide, we can see these are the other toolkits that are in existence. So I'll just read them out in case anybody can't see the screen clearly. We have the guidelines on inclusive language and images in scholarly communication, the anti-racism toolkit I just mentioned for Black, Indigenous and people of colour, the anti-racism toolkit for organisations, and the anti-racism toolkit for allies. So these toolkits have all come about based on suggestions from people in the community. They've been run by working groups working incredibly hard to put them out. And we talked earlier about the content strategy. So one of the things we know is that we need to have a process for maintenance of these and updating and so on. And so while we need working groups to bring these things to life, we also need volunteers who are happy to work as a kind of editorial capacity to make sure that things don't go out of date, or that useful additions can be made over time. or to start all over again and create a new toolkit, you know, in the future if that feels necessary. On to the next slide, please. Please, reminder, ask any questions in the chat, or I can see a Q&A icon on my screen. I don't know if attendees can, but either in the Q&A or the chat, people are looking out for your questions and ideas, so do share. And this is something else that was worked on in 2023. So the Workplace Equity Project, some of you may remember in 2018, there was a big survey done. The first iteration of the Workplace Equity survey was put out there. This is a repeat of that survey. The survey was open from May to July and received 1,755 responses from six continents. The project leaders' names are here, Xavi Shoan and Simone Taylor. There are other people involved in the group as well doing the work. The data analysis was completed late last year, and the group are currently finishing up the draft of the executive summary, and they are planning to put that out with 4 key themes and are working towards a February or March timeline for release. You'll be hearing a lot from us when that happens. We'll be communicating out the findings, and hope that the plan is that there's going to be a list of recommendations to improve workplace equity, especially in the context of these 4 key themes that are going to be drawn out. And the intent is to help individuals and organizations make the industry more equitable with engaged employees. So I'll hand back to Alice, I think, now for this slide. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, Bernie. So yes, a quick look ahead now to 2024. We have set some new strategic priorities we agreed late last year for this year. The first one is what I will attempt to say, operationalizing ourselves, so future-proofing the coalition, really. So we feel like we have moved on from babyhood through toddlerhood and teenagerdom, and now we are ready to be a bit more mature in how we kind of think about ourselves. So we're going to take some time this year to document our processes, to think about succession planning. That's really already in progress or in place to a large extent through the convener elect and convener positions, and but we will probably look at doing the same for treasurer. So we're really going to take a bit of time to sort of make sure that we are not just kind of fit for purpose now, but fit for purpose in the future as well, so that if anything happens, everything is very clear and available to the community. We also want to spend a bit of time clarifying our value proposition. We're quite conscious of the fact that, you know, we've been officially an organisation for about 4 years or so now, and we're very appreciative of the support we've had, particularly from our members and partners in terms of the finances, but also obviously in terms of the signatories, and everybody who gets involved with our volunteer work is also massively, massively appreciated. But I think, you know, C4DISC is one of those organisations which is we have in common with many sort of more formal not-for-profit organisations where people support it because it's a good thing, but it's not necessarily clear what the value proposition is. It's kind of, I think we kind of instinctively know it, but we haven't necessarily done the best possible job of articulating it. So we also want to spend some time thinking about that this year, and we're very likely to reach out to the community, including all of you, for some thoughts and feedback on that. So that's going to be an important thing for this year. And then the other thing is, and I think Bernie alluded to this, thinking about what additional resources we can develop, but also really importantly, how we can make sure that we maintain and keep up to date and valuable the resources that we've already developed. So really kind of putting our house in order. So it's a little bit of a consolidatory kind of year, if you like. We don't have sort of big, massive, exciting new projects, but I think it's really important for us to take a bit of stock and spend some time really making sure that we are very solid where we are now. Again, if you have any questions about, you know, more about why we came up with these priorities or any thoughts on them, please do share them in the chat, and we'll be delighted to talk a bit more about them. So now I'm going to hand back, I think, to, am I handing back to you, Bernie, or am I talking to this? I've lost the plot now. I think I'm handing back to you to talk about this.
Yeah, I've lost the plot too, but I'm happy to be handed back too.
Sorry.
Let me just start my video. Okay, so yeah, looking forward. So we had, when a few years ago, maybe more recently than a few years ago, we had a communications and outreach committee, and that has kind of been on hiatus for a while, but we are relaunching that committee imminently. So I'll be putting out a call for volunteers, and we'll put something on our website. I should say also that there's an area on our website that asks for working group suggestions, and if anyone has an idea for a project that we should be working on, whether it's something like one of the toolkits or something else, do go ahead and fill in that form. And if you have any problems at all, you can always email us at c4disc@gmail.com, because we really, really want to hear your ideas. We're here to serve the community, so it's really important. So the Communications and Outreach Committee, we've already got quite a few tasks lined up for them to help with. So yeah, look out for that call. It'd be great to have as many hands to the pump as we can manage to corral. So that will be great to help us do some more amplification and communication of our work. As I already alluded to, I won't say much about this. Workplace equity project results coming soon. Hopefully you'll find them really useful to discuss, and there'll be suggestions and recommendations that could be implemented in workplaces. And it will be very interesting to compare results to the last survey and see what's changed and what hasn't, maybe. Another new exciting innovation for this year, and I have to say this came about based on a conversation that I had with Amanda Whiting from ALPS, the Association for Learned and Professional Publishing Publishers. She approached me with an idea from ALPS that it would be great for us as kind of an umbrella organization to showcase what people are up to. So we're going to start a new webinar series where we showcase what our members and partners organizations in the first instance, but it may expand out further to anyone in the community, where people can have very short showcase slots to talk about practical things they're doing in DIA in their organizations, very much aimed on a basis of learning from what's been implemented on how to enable others to take some of those ideas. And also, as I said before, and I think this is really important, to talk about what hasn't worked as well as what has, because it's really important to hear if people have tried things that haven't worked. And we've already seen, I should say, in our community of practice, some really good ideas about how to deal with various issues that people can come across when they're trying to do this important work within their organizations. Sometimes, especially in smaller organizations where they might be a sole voice or one of two, or there might be some resistance from any level of the organization. So that we know that there's really important work to be done in sharing how you overcame that in your organization, or what worked and what didn't. So really looking forward to being able to show the work rather than just talk about the work. I think there's a great expression that in some cases, or in many cases, policy can outstrip practice, and it's very important that we get on with the practice as well as the policy. And finally, more evolution of the community of practice. We want this to really be a place where people can connect, share ideas, grow. We're going to grow the community. We may come up with another way for people to share, as well as the calls, because we know that the time slot doesn't suit everybody. And we will keep reaching out, and the committee will keep reaching out to hear what you want us to do. We're here for you, so please do share that information. And I think that might be the end of me now. Yeah. I'm happy to talk to this, Alice, or shall I just hand back to you?
I can do this. I think we're
Great.
pretty much
Thank
done now. Thank you. So these are just the ways that you can get involved. You can sign up for C4DISC News, and I think we're going to send a quick message after this with a short survey. Well, 3 questions, I think 2 questions, 2 or 3 questions, which includes an option to sign up there if you would like to. As Bernie says, please do share your working group suggestions if you have ideas. We'd love to hear them. Join the community of practice, which Bernie's also told you about. We're always on the lookout for project committee volunteering opportunities. Again, Bernie's told you about some of the ones we know are coming up, but there will certainly be more. Let us know about your own events and efforts, and consider taking part in one of the webinars. And then obviously, really importantly, we'd love to increase our membership. We'd love to increase the number of partners we have. And if neither of those are options for you, you can also adopt our statement of principles. And we strongly encourage you to do so and to promote the fact that you've done so. And obviously, we also welcome any other ideas that you have to help us as we try to achieve our mission and vision. So I think that is everything that we wanted to share with you. And we would now love to hear your questions, your suggestions, anything else that you would like to share with us. So I think we will, in a minute, turn the slides off, give you a chance to take down that information if you want to, but then switch back to maybe not spotlighting me anymore. I don't know. Anyway, Melanie, I can see, Melanie Schlosser, I can see that you have raised your hand. Melanie, as mentioned, is the past convener of C4DISC. Melanie, I've lost you now, but did you want to? Oh, Melanie says she can't unmute. Is somebody able to help with that?
There we go. Okay, I'm unmuted now. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight something really important in chat from Leslie Swartz, pointing out that there is a limited amount of participation from the Global South in the work that we're currently doing. And it's mostly focused in Latin America right now. And so there's a lot of a large community of practice in scholarly communications in Africa, for example, that is not currently represented in this work. And I replied with a couple of thoughts, but because this is something that we have been aware of all along and keep coming back to. But I do think it was worth kind of bringing this up in this context, both to give other steering committee members a chance to kind of talk about how they're thinking about this. And then also to kind of flag this as something that the steering committee might want to consider putting on the priority list for this year if we feel like we're ready to start doing more of that kind of growth and outreach.
Thanks, Melanie. And yes, I mean, I'll jump in briefly to say we, as you say, we have considered this at various points, and we did actually talk about whether this is something that we should make a priority for this year. And I think at the time we made the decision that we really needed to spend this year kind of properly getting ourselves in order before we really work on better outreach, particularly in the Global South, because we all agree that that's a big need. I am completely open to revisiting that as a priority. I think, it was something we had quite a lot of conversation about. Leslie, I can see that you're here. If you feel comfortable and would like to comment, we can take you off mute and you can speak, or if you'd rather, yes, okay, great. Can we? Yes.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So probably unlike most people, it's about 36 degrees here in Cape Town, 30 centigrade. So it's extremely hot. But thank you. Look, I mean, thank you very much. I can't even remember how we got the invitation, and I think it was through Cielo, even to attend this. It's telling me that I'm speaking in Portuguese, but can people? It's probably because of my accent, but can people understand my English?
You're fine. You're fine, Leslie.
Okay, I'll just cancel that. That's interesting because I mean, wow, it would be great if I could speak Portuguese. But of course, language, just to take the prompt. I mean, one of the issues that we deal with is, the vast majority of people publishing and reading in English are not first language, which obviously is something that you've taken up. So I feel very unprepared to offer anything. I just wanted to say how this hot a topic this is, certainly for the South African Journal of Sciences. We are the journal of the Academy of Sciences of South Africa, and we're the leading interdisciplinary science journal on the African continent, and are quite widely read, and we participated in Cielo last year. We have quite recently developed our own inclusion policies, and so on and so forth. I don't have a specific thing to offer, and the minute I typed that, my heart sank, because of course I don't have a lot of time either. But I do. But having said that, I'm not kind of promising things. I think there are many people. I'm also in a different project which is not part of this, which regards publishing, and we're working together with colleagues in the UK, with a cohort of academics in Ghana and a cohort of people in Indonesia. And I've done quite a lot of work on writing skills and academic practices in a range of African countries. So there's quite a lot happening. And one of the challenges is simply, partly why there is just if you're lucky enough, as I am in my home in South Africa, to have broadband internet, that's fantastic. Most Africans don't. Just even the cost of attending a free Zoom meeting in terms of data is a huge thing for people in the global south. So there's lots to talk about there. But I don't want to dominate, but we would like to engage.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate.
Sorry if I spoke too much.
Really appreciate you raising this, Leslie. It's very important, and I think one thing that perhaps I should have been clearer on when I initially responded was that we are not in any way intending to be exclusionary. So we very much welcome. We were thrilled when Cielo joined as a member, and are really delighted to have Alex Mendonça as their representative. And Alex, you're helping out on this call and have been a fantastic addition. It's more sort of when and how we very actively try to internationalize. And I think you've raised a very good point. I suspect there's a lot of people on the call who also think we should be doing, I think we all think we should be doing more sooner. So I suggest that we take this back and discuss further at the next steering committee meeting about what we could do, at least in some respects in the short term, as well as having this longer sort of medium to long term goal to absolutely make this more of an inclusive organisation globally. Thank you. Alex and Ed, are there any other questions that have or suggestions that have come up that you'd like to share?
Hi, just there was an earlier comment that there was a recommendation for adding the anti-racism toolkit for allies to PubPub and saying it's only available via PDF. So that was just an earlier comment.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. And again, let's put that on the agenda for our next meeting. As Gillian said, we have some funds available. We've been fiscally conservative for good reason, but we do have some resources available, and that sounds like an excellent suggestion. So thank you to whoever made that. Anything else? Or can't believe that there's however many 141 people on this call and nobody has any questions for us.
A couple have been answered already. There was another suggestion for an effort, project, or program that encourages editors to engage personally with marginalized authors from first contact to publication, including supporting book proposals and how to engage with the authors at conferences and not be dismissive.
That's another great suggestion. I don't know, in terms of an actual program, but that sounds to me like the sort of thing we could very willingly and happily run webinars and provide guidelines on potentially. I probably should have mentioned, I think we failed to mention the fact that we have educational webinars that we offer in conjunction with some of our member organisations, in particular SSP. So it's always helpful to have ideas for topics for those, and that certainly sounds like it would be a great topic and maybe could develop into something a bit more programmatic. So thank you again for that, to whoever made that suggestion.
There was also a question that was already answered in the chat, asking if there were people with disabilities included in the creation of the toolkit for disability and equity. And Melanie and Karen already answered that, yes, there were people, everyone in the steering committee that was involved in that in making that toolkit is a person with a disability.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, and that's actually important to note. I think that's true of all the toolkits, that the people who work on them, and this really goes to the diversity tax honorarium issue that I mentioned earlier, is that we are very cognizant of the fact that the people who are putting a lot of the work into the toolkits, as an example, are people who are themselves marginalized in the way that the toolkit is hoping to address. So it's a sort of double thank you to all of you who've been involved in that way.
Alice, this is Bernie. I just put in the chat that I just did a quick count, and we have 33 countries represented in the community of practice currently. So that's good news. And I just wanted to say, in addition, that I failed to mention this, but when we set up the community of practice, we very much have an organic approach to seeing how it should best develop in terms of topics covered, but also whether we'll end up having smaller communities around different topics or different potentially regional kind of groups. So we're kind of open to that, and we're being very fluid in how it evolves, and we'll see by who joins and the conversations we have. And I'm very aware that there's conversation in the chat about the different sorts of ways we could communicate asynchronously between and around meetings, and that is a conversation we have begun to have. And we will, and it's a good example of why we need volunteers, because to run more than one kind of, we might have a Discord group, somebody might want Slack, somebody else might prefer a LinkedIn group, and it might be that we need to do one or two things, and in which case we'd certainly need, the help to run those things. So I'll stop there because I can see Patty has her hand up. But and also 7 people have joined the community since this call began, so that's great news. Thank you, everybody.
That is fantastic. And I will just reiterate that Bernie and Vanessa are both meant to be very part-time, and they do a fabulous job. So yes, volunteer help with that would be fantastic. And I will also, Patty, I will get to you in just 1 minute, say if anybody has like a community engagement platform that you can genuinely recommend, I think I probably speak for many people on this call when I say we would love to hear about it, because it's very hard to find one single way of engaging with people all around the world that works for everyone. So Patty, over to you.
Hi, yes, I just couldn't let us end without having giving a plug for this new equity in editorial boards toolkit that is going to be launched hopefully within the next month. It's a toolkit that's really developed for practical use. Is to advise editors in their actions to diversify editorial boards and ensure equity and peer review. It can be overwhelming, I think, sometimes for editorial offices to figure out ways to do this. And this new toolkit does come up with very practical advice about, it discusses strategies for things like intentional recruitment among marginalized communities and developing inclusive cultures within journal teams, demographic data, how to gather it and how to use it, how to provide authors with feedback about bias-free wording and reviewer comments, and appointing special diversity editors, and a number of other things. So we hope you'll be on the lookout for that, and hopefully it'll be helpful to a lot of people.
Thanks, Patty. And yes, plug, very well deserved plug, and an encouragement to those of you that aren't already signed up to get our news to do so, because that way you will hear about it as soon as it is published. Anything else that anybody would like to suggest, ask, contribute? If not, I can give you all 9 minutes of your time back, which I'm sure nobody will object to. So if there's no other questions or comments, I will bring this meeting to a close. We really would appreciate your feedback. You will get, as I say, a short note, including a super short survey in Google, that we would really appreciate your feedback. This is the first time we've done anything like this. We want to do it on an annual basis, but we want to keep improving it. There will be things that we won't have done as well, and hopefully some things that we have done well that you've enjoyed about it. Please do share your feedback with us so that we can make this even better next time. And thank you again. It's a fantastic turnout. We are absolutely thrilled at the level of interest and support for what we do. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon, I hope.